Ooh, a spicy question. I
because
love
the
it.
writing is sort of everything, right? Like you can fix plot holes, but if the writing isn't
So some
there,
readers love that, and some readers are like, but I wanted more of this. So it's kind of a gamble.
Hello and welcome back to the Right and Wrong podcast. On today's episode, I am joined by the British Book Awards Agent of the Year 2022 and the founder of the Lewinsohn Literary Agency, Becky Thomas. Hello.
Hi.
Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me. I thought it would be cool if we started at the beginning, your entry point into publishing. Am I right in thinking that your first job in the industry was at Faber and Faber?
Yeah, that's right. It was quite a unusual entry, slightly accidental. I was just with a sort of Southeast London recruitment agency when I graduated, and I was working in travel insurance. And I didn't like that job at all, and wasn't using my English degree in any way. And then I asked my recruitment agency to find me something else, and they just happened to find me a part-time temping job at Faber. So once I was in there, I just thought this is the job for me, and just kind of stuck with it as long as they would let me. Yeah.
So it wasn't a path that you'd set for yourself that you were like, I want to get into publishing. It was sort of serendipitous that you just were pointed in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I'd done a degree in English literature, and I think in my head I was going to go and be a journalist or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd applied to work at bookshops in my teens, but other than that, no, I didn't really understand or have much knowledge of what the publishing industry was. And these are the days where it was very kind of rudimentary kind of Google search engine. So before I went for my first day, I just kind of searched who Faber was online and was like, oh yeah, I recognize some of these authors. I've worked on their books at uni. So that was it. It was, looking back now, it was very naive. But I think it's harder and harder for people to kind of enter that way now. But yeah, it was just very serendipitous.
Yeah. And you were there for a few years, presumably sort of getting an understanding of publishing and the industry as a whole before, am I right in thinking you then became contracts director at Abner Stein?
Yeah, well, the job I had at Faber is one that only really exists at Faber, I think, which is kind of copyright manager, looking after a lot of the estates and the poets who didn't traditionally have agents. So I was working kind of licensing their works, doing author care for people like Seamus Heaney, who never had an agent. And so it was almost like this kind of internal agent role at Faber. So it was very unusual, but basically it kind of gave me a grounding for kind of negotiation and author care. So sort of pivoting into agenting made the most sense for me when it was time to move on.
Right. Okay.
And yeah, then I got offered a job as contracts director, maternity cover at Abner Stein. And then I was like, this is my way to sort of test whether the agent side of the fence is for me.
Okay. What is a contracts director? What is that role?
That role is essentially negotiating all the contracts on behalf of the agency. Not every agency has a contracts person. It depends kind of on the volume of contracts that they get. But the agents will negotiate, the headline terms of the deal. And then the contracts person would then sort of negotiate with the contracts team at a publisher every kind of finer point of the contract. And you're also doing things like getting authors cleared for their tax exemption status and things like that. Okay. And one of the authors I actually had to clear their tax exemption status for while I was there was the newly elected President Obama. So that was quite fun to do.
Wow, that's cool. Okay, yeah. So contract director is kind of the agents are taking the point on the initial negotiation, and then the contracts director comes in to kind of dot the T's, dot the I's and cross the T's.
Yeah, but you get kind of very much in the weeds on stuff on some of those ones, depending on who you're dealing with.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And then that presumably set you in. It sounds like everything was just building towards you learning all of the skills required to become a literary agent. And it was, you only started building did you start building your list when you moved to WME?
Yes, I did. So I kind of almost took a sort of retrograde step and became an assistant to an agent, because that was kind of the only way you can kind of start building your list and start from, in at the ground level. The thing about being an agent is there's only really agent or assistant as a role. There isn't really a kind of bigger path than that. So that was how I kind of started out, working with my agents' clients and then building my list on the side as well.
Okay. And it's my understanding that with like literary agencies, if you're applying for a role, if you're going to become an agent's assistant, there is a sort of, it's not necessarily written, but it's a sort of understanding that you will at some point start building a list of your own. Is that kind of generally accepted?
Yeah, I think so. I think probably maybe it is dependent on the different agencies and how much that agent needs more of an administrative support role.
Sure.
At the time, WME was William Morris, and they had a real kind of path for their assistants to become agents. So that was kind of part of the appeal of going there.
Okay. Yeah. And I noticed at this point in your publishing journey, it says on the website that you were booking festival lineups for literary tents.
Yeah.
What was that for? Was that a different thing entirely, or was that associated to the other work you were doing?
No, that was something that me and the agent that I work with it was like the kind of very early days of festivals having literary tents, kind of music festivals expanding their literary tents. And I think also the thing about WME is it has a big music department and booking department. So I think basically it was Rob DeBank, who ran Festival and Camp Festival, sort of approached us and said, I don't know where to start with the kind of literary world. Who should I be having on in the literary tent? And we kind of took it over from there.
Oh, okay. That's actually something that I've been has gone over my head. So what happens at the literary tent at a music festival?
Essentially, it was basically we'd reach out to authors or authors that we already represented and kind of curate 3 days of readings and conversations. And that was kind of how it started, really. It was very organic, and we were given like a lot of trust by the festival to just choose, which people we wanted to have on, and then offer them some camping and and some guest list, and that was it, really. But it was a very, now I think all those places have proper people hired to do that kind of stuff, but it was the very kind of early days of it. But it kind of introduced me to a lot of talent at the same time. It was a kind of real golden era of performance poetry and slam poetry, who kind of bridged that gap between music and literature. So it kind of introduced us to a lot of those people, and places like Book Slam would get involved with us as well.
Okay. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's I've not been to a music festival for such a long time. I was not aware that this was a thing there, but that sounds awesome. So we're almost up to where you are now. After WME, you went to Fox Mason, which a couple of years later was acquired by. Was that move you going from assistant to full literary agent?
That was was me kind of really being as independent as possible. I worked with a guy called Ben Mason who ran Fox Mason, and that was me really kind of establishing my list and being a full-time agent.
And then Fox Mason a couple of years later was acquired by Johnson and Alcock. And then, long story short, in 2021, you founded your own agency, Lewinsohn Literary. Was that something you'd been thinking about for a long time, or was it just like everything aligned and you were like, oh, I should make my own agency?
Everything aligned, really. It was mostly the pandemic that was
Right.
the change, which I think probably happened to a lot of people, where I was basically self-sufficient, and working from home, and my authors were having a real moment of getting great attention, and lots of success, and it just felt like the right time to be like, here's our identity as a list rather than as a sort of side to another bigger agency. And yeah, I just realized I could do it by myself, so it gave me the confidence.
I guess making your own agency, obviously you're the boss now, the freedom to kind of operate however you want to, create your own structures and your own rules and things like that. I do have a question though, because it's not unusual for agents to be moving from different agencies. So I've always wondered, in terms of contracts and your list, what are the logistics for like moving an agency? How does that affect your authors and any deals that they might have in place?
Again, it's really dependent, and this is kind of getting into the weeds a bit, but I was an associate of Johnson & Alcock, which meant I was technically self-employed. And so I got to take my list and my contracts with me. Now, I think if you're employed by an agency, you have to leave the contracts behind, but you can take the authors for their new deals.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
And have you, from when you first started building your list, have you kept your authors all the way through the different agencies to now, obviously, your own agency?
There's always some change. So I would say probably the majority is still with me, but I think there's always kind of come-ins and go-ins. And I think if I had all of the same people from the beginning, I wouldn't be able to take on any more people, because you end up kind of feeling a bit overwhelmed by the amount. So yeah, I think there's just natural times where it's time to part ways and you've done everything you can for an author.
Sure.
But I would say, a lot of my authors I've worked with for about 15 years in total now.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's amazing. Yeah. It's just always one of those things I wonder, where it's like, what are the rules in terms of moving between agencies? Because it seems to me that almost always the agent moves and almost all of the authors in their list go with them. Yeah,
I mean, it is generally that way. You might not be able to take the contracts with you,
right?
But you would be able to take the authors if they're willing. And some authors just don't like change. So some of them are like, oh no, actually, I'm fine here. But in the main, your relationship with your authors is the relationship. And and I obviously spoke to all my authors before making the decision to check that they were comfortable with it.
Okay. Yeah. Let's talk about your authors. Let's talk about your list. In a sort of broad sense, what sort of genres and ages do you represent?
Oh, well, I think one of the things that's brilliant about being an agent, and one of the things that I think is sort of brilliant about my agency, is that I can do a bit of everything. I tend to be driven by the voice, and my books are nearly always quite contemporary. I don't do a lot of what we call genre, which is kind of stuck in sort of like, historical or sci-fi fantasy, just because it's not my area of expertise, and those are very specific kind of authors. But if my authors want to move into those fields, then I'll completely support them in doing that. But essentially, I would say it's the whole gamut from literary to commercial. It's, I do cookbooks, I do illustrated books, I do young adult. But I would say in the main, it's kind of like on the nonfiction side, it's kind of memoir and pop culture. And on the fiction side, it's kind of literary and commercial fiction. But the commercial fiction has always got a bit of an edge, and it's very smartly written. So I think commercial fiction gets seen as being sort of dumbed down, and it definitely isn't. It's one of the hardest genres to write into.
Yeah. I think it doesn't help that you like when we call one genre literary, it makes it feel very like smart and sophisticated, and then you put it as like almost the opposite of commercial. It's kind of an unfair comparison.
Yeah, and I would say quite a lot of the stuff I do sort of really brilliantly bridges that gap between the two.
Okay. Yeah. That those are the books that tend to really like become very, very popular, is when it's you can bridge the gap between being very commercial but also being like very smartly written and making a point, having a message in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would it be perhaps easier then to identify what you don't represent? So we ticked off genre stuff, so fantasy, sci-fi, historical, don't represent that. I'm guessing you don't represent middle grade or younger.
Again, if somebody, one of my authors wants to move into writing middle grade, then I'd be absolutely up for doing that. And I have had some authors who have written middle grade, even picture books. So it is possible. It's just a kind of whole new set of kind of connections and marketplace that you're dealing with.
You probably wouldn't be that inclined to take a query which was focused on middle grade or like picture books or something.
Probably not, no. But yeah, if somebody's kind of already on my list and they want to try that, or their approach to do that, which is probably more likely, then we would definitely explore that.
Okay, right. Yeah. And you are currently open to submissions?
I'm not. It's
You're not.
it's purely a capacity thing, because it's having time to read the slush pile as well. But what tends to happen is people find their way to me. So a lot of the authors I've taken on in recent years have been recommended by people, either people within the industry or other authors of mine. So I find that like there's sort of like a natural filter where authors who I'm meant to be working with find me. So yeah, I'm not currently open, but I think stuff does reach me if it's meant to reach me.
Okay, right. Do you have any plans to open yourself up to queries again at some point, or are you kind of happy with where you're at for now?
I think I just have to keep reviewing it, because the worst thing would be to sort of being a kind of one woman agency. I need to be able to really focus on my existing authors and give them the majority of my time. So I think, if there are periods where I feel like I'm able to, then yes. Or if, I expand and bring in more staff, then yes. But at the moment, it's just kind of being really realistic about capacity. I had it open for the first year, and it just was, there wasn't that much that came through from the submission pile. So it just didn't seem like the amount of work that it took wasn't justifying the reward of finding people.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've spoken to more and more agents recently who are sort of moving into sort of on-off periods with their submissions being open or closed, like every other month, or like they're open for 6 months and they're closed for 6 months. Just because I think, like you say, it's not necessarily always time efficient, especially if your list is already pretty substantial.
Yeah, absolutely. But we do review it. So it is, it is something that we do review, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So something to keep an eye on then, I guess. I do want to talk a little bit about queries and submissions in the event that you open it at some point. And it's always just interesting to hear how agents approach that, but we'll talk about that a bit later on. Anyone who is thinking about submitting, maybe hold off then, I guess. There is a submission page on your website, but if you're closed as of September 25, probably hold off. And where would you, if people wanted to like keep an eye on things and just see if you were going to open up, would Instagram be the best place to kind of stay on top of? Right.
Instagram would be the best place to check.
Okay, great. We are at the point in the episode where we set sail, and I ask you, Becky, if you were stranded on a desert island with a single book, which book do you hope that it would be?
So I've decided to go for Fever Pitch by Nick Hornby.
Okay, what's the story here? Why is that the book that grabs you?
Well, firstly, in a really basic way, I'm a massive Arsenal fan, and when I first read that, I was like, oh my God, somebody's written the perfect book for me. I checked. It came out in 1992, so I would have been only about, I'm going to give my age away here, 10 years old. And I think it was the point where I moved from reading kind of point horror and Sweet Valley High to sort of adult books. And I was just completely obsessed with it. I got it on tape out the library as well, so I could play it in the car on car trips. And it was also, Nick Hornby was the first author I ever went and do a talk as well when About a Boy came out. So just kind of looking back, I'm sort of identifying that as being quite a pivotal book. I remember making my English teacher read it. And I think for me, first of all, I'd be able to kind of relive Arsenal's glory when I'm stuck on an island and I'm not able to go to the games. But also I think it's like the perfect blend of kind of, it's just got everything, that book, I think, in terms of humor and poignancy and thinking about human relationships. And also you've got the kind of culture element that I always like in my books. I love football, I love music, I love film, and I love to see those elements in the books that I work on.
Okay, cool. That's fun. Yeah, I think I think it's, no one's said that before, so it's always fun to have something new thrown into the desert island. That's great. I love that. So, as I mentioned, next up, I do want to chat a little bit about queries and cover letters. Even though you're closed, I think it's a really interesting thing for people to hear about how agents do tackle these kinds of things. We're going to get into that, as well as maybe a bit about the industry and trends. That's all going to be in the extended episode available on patreon.com/right and wrong. Oh, well, hopefully not the book.
Yeah.
I think the pitch, fine, sure.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, hopefully not the writing the book. But on that note, we've reached the end of the episode. So thank you so much, Becky, for coming on and telling me all about your kind of journey through publishing and your career as a literary agent. It's been really cool chatting with you and learning all about the Lewinsohn Literary Agency.
Yeah, you too. Thank you for all the questions. Very thought-provoking.
And for anyone listening, if you want to keep up with what Becky and the agency are doing, you can follow on Instagram at Lewinsohn Literary, or you can head over to the website www.lewinsohnliterary.com. As I mentioned, it's as of September 2025, Becky is closed to submissions, but if you follow on Instagram, the moment she's open, I would imagine there'll be posts, there'll be stories to say you can query now. To support this podcast, like, follow, subscribe, join the Patreon for ad-free extended episodes, and check out my other podcast, The Chosen Ones and Other Tropes. Thanks again, Becky, and thanks to everyone listening. We will catch you on the next episode. Shout out time. One of my amazing patrons, Lee Foxton, is querying their debut novel. It's a family drama, commercial fiction along the lines of Jojo Moyes and David Nichols. Fingers crossed, I am rooting for you. Good luck.